The first half couldn't have been more even. Each side would launch an attack only to have it cut short by some great defence. Wanderers' Ben Ryan was told before the game to run straight and hard, so he wasn't going to stop for anyone or anything, not even a camera. They went to the break 3-3. A few inspirational words from coach Peter Cook had Wanderers making all the promising play, but still the defence shut them down at a crucial moment. However, persistence paid off for the Blues. And Peter Fallon didn't miss the chance to put them further ahead. But Uni refused to give up and with just 1 minute to go tried one last time. Wanderers knew full well the final whistle was just around the corner and made sure the ball was quickly returned to the other end of the park. Wanderers first grade premiers for 1993.
It's something every household produces, tons and tons of rubbish. But some everyday throwaway items are disguised. Recyclers describe them as valuable resources, and Newcastle City Council is offering to collect more of them.
Now we're picking up recyclable materials on a weekly basis instead of monthly, and we're picking up additional materials now.
As part of Council's campaign to halve household waste by the turn of the century, the service will operate on normal garbage collection days. Glass, PET bottles, aluminium and steel cans are still on the wanted list. In addition, newspapers, cardboard, plastic milk bottles and cartons will also be collected.
It's just a matter of making sure that things that you might have previously put in the garbage don't go in the garbage now, that they are separated and put out for recycling collection.
4 trucks will operate in the Newcastle area. They're expected to collect up to 10,000 tonnes of extra recyclables a year. Council plans to let it drop all 48,000 households, giving exact details of what can and can't be recycled.
In that will also be an order form for if people would like to buy a recycling crate from Council, which will be made available at cost, and that just gives them something to put all the material in.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
"21-year-old Darren Troy Davis of Armidale and 28-year-old Harold Bernard Wiggins of Emmaville pleaded guilty to the murder of Kenneth John Knight, then aged 35, of Invergowrie in February 1990. The three had been involved in a cannabis plantation near Burralong Creek at the time and had a falling out. It was alleged that Davis and Wiggins lured their victim to the plantation, where he was shot twice with a double-barrelled shotgun. His body was then buried, but some months later it was removed from its shallow grave, weighted down with a large rock and thrown into a deep pool in Burralong Creek. Acting on information received, police searched the waterhole last February and recovered the skeletal remains. Soon after, Davis and Knight were charged with the murder. 2 other people, Philip and Robin Davis, who own this Shell petrol station in Armidale, were charged with being accessories to the murder and drug offences. They are expected to appear in court again next week. Late today, Justice Campbell remanded Davis and Wiggins in custody for sentencing at a date to be set. Counsel for Davis submitted that his client was only 18 at the time of the crime and was led on by Wiggins. Counsel for Wiggins said he had confessed and was contrite. Justice Campbell described their crime as cold-blooded, premeditated murder for commercial gain.
They look like any other healthy teenagers, except these aren't in school. For some, it's been years since they've attended normal classroom lessons, unable to fit in or cope with the system.
I've been off and on for 3 years, but that's about it, since high school.
I just don't like it there. It's just too many teachers hassle you out. It's just hopeless. I was just having hassles at home and stuff, and hassles at school. Always in trouble, so I couldn't be bothered going.
The Alternative School program is a community effort involving police, the Education Department and local youth centre. Students who'd normally spend their time on the streets help make the decisions. The timetable focuses on self-esteem, teamwork and goal setting.
It was begun purely as a motivational and a self-esteem program, but one of the positive offshoots has been that the boys have expressed a desire to get an education. So we're hoping that next term we'll be able to gradually integrate an educational component.
As a pilot program in the Hunter, those involved are being closely watched.
About 50% of them have between an 80 to 85% attendance rate, some a few more.
I just want to get me school certificate and go get apprenticeship.
That's one of the main reasons I come here, because we end up getting our Year 10 certificate through this course.
And what then?
Find a job.
Al Green caught everyone by surprise this afternoon when he called it quits. Just a day earlier he top scored for the Falcons against Illawarra. After 25 years of top-class basketball, Green can still keep up with the young guns and unsettle any player he comes up against in the league. But he says while the body's able, the mind's no longer willing.
Not like I'm ready to jump up out of the seat and run on the court. It's like, okay, got to do it again. So once it gets to that point, I think it's unfair to myself and to the team for me to keep playing.
Meanwhile now admits Newcastle wasn't exactly his preferred choice 3 years ago after parting with Adelaide.
I really did have my doubts about coming to Newcastle because of the situation in hand with the team being in last place, and I felt that I maybe want to go to a bigger city like Melbourne or Sydney or maybe even Brisbane. But I swear I never ever regret it. Newcastle people has been great to me.
Al isn't pulling the pin straight away. His last game will be at the end of the playoffs next month. He then intends to move back to Adelaide to pursue some business interests. Despite the change in the lineup, the players are still showing little signs of nerves. Today is Paul Marquette's birthday, and despite best wishes from his mates, all he really wants is a grand final win. The hype stepped up a little today, signs started to go up around the town, and the players were called together for an official league photo call. After that, it was back to the real world of getting on with training.
And then we're working through, up, back, right, when we get to here, one's picking up.
Everyone stretched out last week's aches and pains. However, Rodney Howe sat out the session due to a broken toe. A few people turned up to watch training, but most people across Newcastle are reserving their support for a personal pat on the back for each player.
Up in my hometown, it's just not, there's a lot of people sort of getting behind me, so that's a lot of good, but yeah, there's always blokes coming up patting you on the back and that, even though you haven't seen him before, don't know him.
And another bouquet for Captain Max Chapman today. He took out the Excalibur Club Award for Players Player, while Lock Mark Glanville took out the First Grade Award and the $2,000 cheque. Darren Curtis, NBN News.
A little bit of Dubbo came to Charlestown Square this morning with the launch of a major tourist campaign. Until now, the sister-city relationship has dealt with raw materials from Dubbo being exported from the Port of Newcastle and the push to upgrade the road link between the two regions.
It's a regional to regional concept. We are working together to the upgrading of the road link between Dubbo and Newcastle, and from there we want to become the inland port for the Port of Newcastle.
With a report on the road upgrading to go before the Assistant Minister for Roads tomorrow, Dubbo is now being advertised as a tourist destination for the people of Newcastle.
It's a great place to come and visit. The country is looking magnificent at the present moment, and we're only 4 hours away from Newcastle.
Concerned at last week's disastrous second-half penalty count, coach Robert Finch has spent the week drumming it into his players to make sure they don't give any opportunity for referee Bill Harrigan to blow his whistle, particularly when it comes to play the balls. But training hasn't been easy all week. Grand final nerves are starting to take their toll.
Yeah, there's been a bit touchy training, just different things, and I think everyone's going to just have to settle down and just take it in for a little while and just prepare on Saturday night for the big game.
Rodney Howe again set out the session due to his broken toe, but he says it won't slow him down on Sunday.
Oh, well, I'm going to have some injections to deaden it so we won't feel it, so I'll be all right, yeah.
Kiwi international Tony Kemp has become a stabilising force in the team, but admits he too is a little overawed at grand final day.
There's a lot of players, very good players that have played and haven't played in a grand final. I'm more than privileged to be playing in one, and it's a highlight of my career, and like I said, it's going to go down in history, and it's something that I'm going to cherish for a long time.
With just a day to go before the game, some players spent the day flat on their back undergoing last-minute physio. Lisa Tynan's staff have been working overtime to make sure Captain Max Chapman's knee is good as can be, Damien Driscoll's and Robbie Ross's back strains make it through, and Tim Madison's nagging Achilles injury will hold out for at least 80 minutes. The players leave Marathon Stadium at 3:45 tomorrow afternoon, and it's hoped a large crowd will be there for the send-off. Darren Curtis, NBN News.
Police say a stolen BMW reached speeds of more than 200 kilometres an hour on the F3 freeway last night. The chase began in Newcastle, where the car was believed to have been involved in several break-ins around the city. A dozen police cars joined the chase, but the pursuit was called off several times because of dangerously high speeds. Extra highway patrol cars were called in from the Sydney end of the freeway, joining those from Newcastle on the Central Coast. It took just under 40 minutes for the BMW, reported stolen from the Sydney suburb of Vaucluse, to reach Wahroonga on Sydney's North Shore. Police say the BMW clipped another vehicle and blew out a tyre as it careered over a median strip. One of 3 youths in the stolen car made a run for it, but was captured a short time later. 2 15-year-olds and an 18-year-old, all from inner city Sydney, were arrested. Andrew Lobb, NBN News. "70-year-old Tom Kelly is still in the John Hunter Hospital. He was out walking his own dog on Burwood Beach yesterday when they were attacked. Tom managed to beat off a dog he described as a Labrador cross, but then it turned on him again.
It was too quick for me. It was a quick lift of his head, and I could feel a bite, like a razor sharp, and then that was it. It must have good teeth.
The dog, which had been playing with other people on the beach, wasn't seen again. Another couple riding horses on Dudley Beach this morning was also attacked, this time by a bull terrier cross, which lunged at a horse and was later captured by a policeman whom it also attacked.
The damage to the horse was pretty severe. From what I could see, it was a laceration probably 67 inches long, quite deep in the horse's chest, and some pretty severe puncture wounds to the rump.
After a final bid for freedom, the dog was recaptured and taken to the RSPCA pound, where it's likely to be put down. The 4th Derby Street Food and Wine Festival drew in the crowds for a taste of the cafe, pub and takeaway scene. Some enjoyed the Parisian atmosphere of outdoor eating, others preferred to stop and bop on a street corner with Newcastle's curvettes. A little further up the street, Civic Park was bustling with Matara crowds, many out to catch a return to the stage after several years by Marsha Hines.
They're the player that proceeded that day. There's someone else done that.
About 80% of people with mental illness now live in the community.
The aim of the Mental Health Act is to ensure that people are treated in the least restrictive environment.
But getting treatment for people with psychiatric conditions is difficult, according to hostel owner Wilma LaRufa. Many of the major psychiatric illnesses, like schizophrenia, are episodic. That means that the condition may periodically become unmanageable and the sufferer will need acute treatment. The LaRufa family's hostel at Riverview, west of Lake Macquarie, has about 135 residents with either psychiatric or intellectual disabilities.
We need somewhere that they are able to go when they become too difficult for this type of situation. We need help in that area.
Help from psychiatric hospitals is often not available because people don't meet the strict criteria for admission outlined in the new 1990 Mental Health Act.
They have to demonstrate in terms of the Act that their illness requires their detention. Simply being ill doesn't mean they should be in hospital.
Australia's Human Rights Commissioner has just completed a 4-year inquiry into mental illness.
Without preempting the findings or recommendations that will be tabled in the Parliament in the next couple of weeks, the reality is that many people have enormous difficulty in getting hospital care for people who are mentally ill. Refuges, shelters, boarding house proprietors, hostel owners, families in the community. When a person becomes mentally ill, they may or may not have been in a hospital before, but very often you can't get them into a hospital. There's no beds.
The number of beds in psychiatric hospitals was reduced in line with the government policy of treating people in the community. Federal Human Rights Commissioner Brian Burdekin says the promise of community care to replace large psychiatric hospitals hasn't become a reality.
Well, one of the reasons I believe, and again I'm not preempting the findings of the inquiry, but one of the reasons I believe deinstitutionalisation has largely been a failure for many people is we have left them in hostels, in boarding houses, in the community. completely unsupported. We've left them without the facilities, we've left them without people to monitor their medication, to gain care for them when they need care, to get hospital treatment when they need hospital treatment. And that's, I believe, one of the great tragedies, and indeed it assumes the proportions of a national scandal, that thousands of Australians who are seriously mentally ill are not getting any treatment or any appropriate and timely treatment.
The Commissioner's report is expected to be tabled in Parliament within a fortnight. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Organisers of today's GrainCorp pre-harvest conference were delighted with the news. The Moree, Binagai and Binaway Gwabagar lines are to reopen. Deputy Premier Ian Armstrong outlining what it means for growers this afternoon.
The Gwabagar line, the Binagai line will both be reopened again, and in the case of Binagai there'll be a reduction of 36 cents a tonne. In the case of Gwabagar, a reduction of $1.38 a tonne as opposed last year, whereas Moree subterminal will go up 40 cents and Walgett will go up 40 cents.
But overall you would see some of these branch lines having a decrease in rates, which I guess is good news and gives them an ideal opportunity to support those lines, give growers an opportunity. And secondly, we would see not more than a 40-cent increase at any one given site.
GrainCorp is predicting a receival of between 4 and 5.5 million tonnes of wheat this year, way up on last year's figure of 3.4.
I haven't seen a crop like this for years. Probably 83, 84 was the last time we saw a crop like this.
Also keeping GrainCorp executives smiling today, the launch of the restructured organisation's share offer. 60 million shares are up for grabs and it's hoped at least half will be snapped up this year.
The shares are being issued at par, a par of $10 each. And for every for every tonne that they deliver, if it is matched to a $10 share, then they will get a rebate of $1.50 in the first year.
The trial started 3 days ago with 160 hopefuls aged between 13 to 15. After elimination games, the final group was worked down to 60, and from there selectors determined who would make up next year's squad. But the most proficient girls aren't always the first to be picked.
We're looking for people that we can work with, people with talent, all sizes, but different positions, someone that we can see has a future.
And a position in the Hunter Academy often leads to bigger things, a chance for selection in state teams and the Australian Institute of Sport.
We've taken a few of your girls from this area. They're always pretty good up in this area, very talented and very committed.
The determination to be spotted today was clear, most of the girls putting in that extra effort. The new squad will begin training shortly in preparation for academies and the State League competition.
More than 30 of the Hunter and Lake Macquarie's political, business and sporting leaders were welcomed by their Illawarra counterparts, with the greeting and awareness that both regions are in direct competition to become the major Olympic training centre for the 2000 Olympics. The day's itinerary revolved around inspecting sporting facilities Illawarra has or is planning to build in the next 7 years. The region boasts 10 international standard venues, including an aquatic centre, plus 12 national amenities for tennis, cycling and archery. The groundwork for this impressive list began 4 years ago. Local MPs decided to pool their allocated government funding for sporting development.
5 electorates worked together and pooled the money, and that of course gave a larger sum of money, somewhere in the vicinity of $250,000 per year, which could be channelled into one particular regional organisation.
This cooperation a key reason for today's visit. On the first stop, the delegation was briefed on how and why Illawarra is ahead in the sport facilities race. The group were told how in May representatives from 3 local councils in the Illawarra region met with the now defunct Sydney Olympic Bid Committee, using a video to show the region's lifestyle and a submission detailing accommodation infrastructure and international standard sporting amenities. Mr McManus says a new committee will now be established to do the hard sell of Illawarra as a training centre on the soon-to-be-appointed Sydney Olympic Committee. The Hunter region's lack of coordination in developing regional sporting facilities was highlighted during an inspection of Illawarra's latest Olympic standard venue, this $1 million athletics track. The Hunter has been trying for 5 years to attain a similar complex. However, individual efforts by separate groups has so far undermined that goal.
We're going to miss out very, very much in more ways than just sporting if we don't get on with it. We've, as I said, got to learn from the past, and the past is we weren't going the right direction.
So the cooperation between all parties in sport in the Illawarra is very, very significant and of great value to the Illawarra and a good message for us.
At a glance, the Hunter has 3 Olympic standard venues, the Broadmeadow Hockey Facility, the Lochinvar Equestrian Centre and the Newcastle Entertainment Centre, which could house indoor sports. Potential Olympic facilities, if upgraded, include the Lambton Swimming Pool, the Newcastle Velodrome and Lake Macquarie itself. Mr Face says the next step involves forming a local committee to sell the Hunter as an Olympic training centre. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
It's the one day of the year when the picturesque King Edward Park is turned over to the speedsters. Cars of all shapes and capacity tried to push it to the limit through the tight and winding course. The record stands at 41.9 seconds from bottom to top, and today some drivers came pretty close to making that just a memory. For Joseph Ruin, though, today will be full of some pretty unpleasant memories after this attempt at finding a different way up the hill. Others squandered valuable seconds through simple mistakes. One driver tried to grate a square surface onto a round wheel. The smell of burning rubber exciting the large crowd, but they reserved their biggest cheers for their sentimental favourite, the good old Holden Tiranas. Today's placings providing vitally important points for the state championship. Despite a pretty hefty offshore wind, the swell managed to stand up. In the senior men's final, Newcastle's Cole Samways worked hard for his waves, but the battle wasn't over once he picked it up. Wollongong's Peter Ritchie tried all afternoon for a floater. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Gary Sumpton ended up winning the division though. John Christensen took out the opens, while young up-and-comer Nick Boone was the highest placed Newcastle rider. Before competitors even go near an aeroplane, their moves are rehearsed over and over on the ground. This round of the state championships is for groups of 4 and 8. Each team must complete as many set moves as possible within a time limit. The group that completes the most formations correctly is the winner. They're travelling at around 180 kilometres an hour, so it's not uncommon for someone to get kicked and finish up with a black eye and bruises.
One of those moves, we just fly past each other's legs, and often when you get caught it really stings a bit, but you got to keep going on, and that's the main key. You just got to keep pushing through.
Failure to complete your allotted formations results in pretty heavy point deductions, and at 10,000 feet you're still able to voice your anger when a manoeuvre goes wrong.
I've often heard the guys yell out, "Oh!" and then really and then get back into it.
The judges make their assessment from video supplied by one of the team, and if it doesn't come out, their efforts are all wasted.
There is a clause we can get a re-jump, but generally if it's an equipment failure, sorry, bad luck, you don't score anything.
The winners have the opportunity to go on to the world titles in Greece next year, so the more dedicated teams are at Elderslie already, getting in as many practice jumps as possible.
The 52-year-old woman was alone in her Glendale home last night. At around 9:30, two men walked in through an unlocked back door and attacked her from behind.
They've come into her sewing room, threw the pillow over her head, and knocked her off the chair onto the ground. They then bound electrical tape around her face and put her hands behind her back and tied her hands up.
They knocked her down twice and put a knife to her throat. They then ransacked the house and escaped with a video recorder, cash and a credit card.
There were death threats in during the time that they were there, and she's very frightened and very shaken by the experience.
Neighbours have been stunned by the attack.
She doesn't look like she's got money or anything like that. She's just a battler, same as everyone else.
The woman has been so terrified by the attack she's moved out of the neighbourhood and has put her home on the market. The bandits tried to use the stolen credit card at a BP station in Cardiff, but with no luck. An attendant was able to get a good description of the men. The first, 25 to 30 years old, 188 centimetres tall with blonde hair in a ponytail. He was wearing blue jeans and joggers. The second, around 30 years old, 186 centimetres tall. He was wearing a black jumper and blue shorts. Peter Ryan, NBN News.